They sent me on a cruise without return. The captain told me something they didn't want me to know. My birthday cake was a store-bought muffin with one crooked candle. It sat on a chipped plate between a jar of low-fat mayonnaise and Kayla's half-eaten sushi. No one sang. No one even looked up when I walked in. Dan, my son, was scrolling on his phone, and Lily, his wife, was whispering about cruise discounts loud enough for me to hear. "She's going anyway. Might as well get a deal," she muttered. Evan giggled. Kayla rolled her eyes. I stood there, holding the crocheted napkin I made last spring, foolishly thinking they might use it for this day. My 78th birthday. My last birthday at home. Dan looked up briefly, then back to his screen. "Mom, sit. This isn't a party, it's a send-off. Don't get it twisted." Lily chimed in, her voice as smooth and sterile as a hospital hallway. "This house needs space for progress, not the past wrapped in wrinkles." She smiled like she was proud of that line. Kayla added, "My friends thought you were the maid. I said yes to avoid explaining your clutter." No one laughed, but no one corrected her either. I sat because that's all they ever expected me to do anymore. Sit, stay quiet, stay out of their photos, and stay out of the way. When Robert was alive, birthdays were mornings by the bay, handwritten notes tucked in my tea tin, and laughter that filled rooms like sunlight. He would have made a cake. Even if it burned, he would have hummed sea shanties and said, "Another year means another voyage, my Sarah." But Robert left on his final voyage and never came back. The ocean took the ship, or the ship took him, and no one ever told me which. But I never blamed the sea. The sea kept him. And on certain mornings when the breeze catches just right, I can still feel him brushing past me, whispering through the wind, "You're still here, so keep going." Dan slid a thick envelope across the table. "Here, it's a cruise. Miami to the Caribbean. 1 week. You leave Friday. We've arranged a companion nurse. You'll be looked after." I stared at the envelope. His hands were clean, no calluses. The same hands that used to build paper airplanes in my lap now handed me departure like it was a favor. "You'll love the ocean, Mom. Maybe even more than you loved Dad." That hurt. He knew better. He knew the sea was the last place I kissed Robert goodbye. He knew I still kept his letters in a box under my bed. Maybe that is why he chose it. If you feel justice deserves celebration, smash that hype button. Let us keep stories like this alive, echoing far, far away. Your support helps us bring understanding and love to those who deserve it. Thank you so much. Keep listening. Lily stood, picked up the plate with the muffin still intact, and dumped it in the trash. "No sugar for seniors," she said flatly. "Your blood pressure spikes with just the sight of frosting." Then she added with a grin that cut me clean, "Besides, it is not really a birthday. It's more like a farewell brunch." Kayla laughed, mocking. Teenage laughter, the kind that smells like cologne samples and entitlement. I have lived in this house for over 40 years. I paid off the mortgage with my teaching salary. I walked the halls with swollen ankles, made soup during flu seasons, stitched curtains when Lily wanted to modernize, and built a herb garden Kayla used to brag about in elementary school. But now I was a burden, a placeholder for memories they wanted repainted in gray and white. I once declined Dan's request to refinance the house for a business investment after he had already ruined 2 marriages and gambled through our emergency fund. That became the unforgivable sin. "You never trusted me," he snapped, "even after I let you live here rent-free." "Let me," he said. "Let me," as if this house was his, as if every doorknob had not passed through my hand first. I kept a savings account, my own little insurance against needing anyone. I never told them. It was never meant as a secret, just a safety. But in their eyes, that was betrayal. "If you had money, why make us pay for your meds?" Lily asked once, ignoring the fact that they forgot to pick up my prescription for 3 straight weeks. Kayla resented me for not paying for her custom graduation cap. "You spend money on lavender oil and birdseed," she snapped, "but not on something that matters." I could have yelled. I could have defended myself. But at some point, silence becomes more powerful than pleas. I was too tired to beg for dignity. So I nodded. I opened the envelope, and I smiled. Not because I was excited, but because I finally understood. They were not sending me on vacation. They were sending me away. The plane to Miami was cold and quiet. Mira, the woman they hired to be my companion nurse, did not speak unless necessary. She wore crisp scrubs like a uniform, not for comfort but for distance. Her clipboard had more checkboxes than conversation. And when I asked where she was from, she just said, "The agency." That was all. No smile, no warmth, just a job. At the terminal, while we waited to board, she took my purse. "Security," she said. "We'll carry everything for you." She sealed my medications into a pouch I was not allowed to touch. When I asked for my ID to check something at the counter, she said, "Already handled." Her fingers never left her tablet. The ship loomed like a floating hotel. Too big, too new, too unfamiliar. I had not been on the water in decades. Not since Robert. He would have hated this kind of cruise. He believed in ships that creaked and spoke in waves, not those with elevators and neon lights. Still, as I stepped onto the gangway, the ocean smell hit me like memory, and I breathed it in. I had no choice. Mira checked us in. She handled my keycard, my luggage, my medical notes. I noticed one thing: there was no return itinerary in my welcome folder. No disembarkation date. Just port of departure, Miami. No arrival listed. No reminder to schedule flights home. "Is there a return date I missed?" I asked. Mira responded without looking up. "They'll arrange that. Just enjoy." Then she changed the subject. In the cabin, she set my pills into labeled boxes and took my passport. "We'll store it in the staff safe," she said, "in case of emergency." But that was the emergency. I had no identification, no control, no copies of my insurance, no phone, no itinerary, just a keycard and a silent companion. The room was beautiful, but beauty has a way of feeling hollow when you do not know who paid for it or why. That night, I skipped dinner. I said I was tired. Mira did not argue. She left to eat. I slipped into the hallway, holding only the chain around my neck. Robert's gift, the small steel locket with our initials etched inside. I walked to the observation deck. That was where I met him. Josiah Sterling was older than I expected a captain to be. Silver hair, tall shoulders, hands marked by real work. He was standing at the railing, staring out into the dark like he was listening for something. When he turned and saw me, he blinked twice. His eyes lingered not on my face, but on my necklace. "You used to volunteer at the port in Wilmington," he said slowly. "Back in the 70s. I froze. You handed out sandwiches and coats. You bandaged my knee when I fell. You told me to stay out of the crates, or the rats would chew more than my pride." My breath caught. "Josiah?" He nodded. "You were the boy who carried that broken compass. And you were the first adult who didn't look away." We stood in silence for a moment. "I know why you're here," he said finally. "Not for leisure. They sent you." I swallowed. "You mean Dan?" "I got a message from your son's email 2 weeks ago," he said. "It came through an intermediary, official enough to be untraceable. Offered a large sum to arrange a medical incident on board. Something quiet, discreet, no investigation." I gripped the railing. "They want me to die at sea." His face was grave. "They want your absence to feel like a natural drift. No waves, just silence." I looked out over the water. Somewhere beneath the surface, Robert still waited. Or maybe he had finally become the tide. "I need to ask you something," I said, my voice barely more than breath. "Can you help me vanish, but not the way they want?" Josiah nodded slowly. "For you? I owe you a life. You gave me mine." And just like that, I knew. The ocean would not take me this time. I would take it back. I was not meant to hear it. But sometimes, being invisible has its uses. Mira was just outside the cabin door, her voice low and clipped, but the walls were thin and the sea was loud enough to mask any guilt. "Tomorrow night," she said. "Deck 3, port side. Rail is loose. All it takes is one push." A pause, then laughter. "She's frail. I do not even need to push hard." Another silence. "Yes, payment upon confirmation. It will look natural. A slip. Accidents happen at sea every week. No one digs too deep." She hung up. I did not move. Not right away. I stayed frozen in the chair by the window, hands folded, pulse steady like I was already preparing for death. It struck me then dying wasn't their fear. My living was. But I was not afraid, not anymore. If anything, I felt something colder, quieter clarity. They had already buried me in their hearts. I would simply give them what they wanted. I met Josiah on the upper deck just before sunrise. He had his captain's cap in one hand and my husband's locket in the other. "You heard her," I said. "Deck 3, tomorrow night, port side. That is where she plans to do it?" He nodded. "I have a plan, but it will require precision and silence." I nodded back. "You will have both." He explained everything in short, clean steps. I would leave the room before midnight. Mira would think I had taken a walk, like I often did. Josiah would have crew cover cameras for a short technical maintenance window. I would not fall, but something would. Something enough. That afternoon, I sat at the vanity, pulled out a small sewing kit, and clipped a lock of my hair. I placed it in a waterproof pouch, along with an old scarf and one of my expired pill bottles. Josiah provided a weighted medical dummy hand, small enough to pass as mine in a splash, just long enough to float before sinking. I placed my locket inside the scarf and wrapped it tight. It was not easy. That necklace had been with me since Robert gave it to me at the dock, 2 days before his final voyage. But if I wanted to survive, I had to let something go. The next night, at 11:47 p.m., I slipped out of the room. Mira was showering. I wore a crew uniform Josiah had secured, hood up, badge clipped low. I made it to deck 3 unnoticed. The wind was harsh, but not cruel. The ocean below was black and roaring. I stood at the marked railing, where the screws had been loosened intentionally, and looked down. For a moment, I imagined Robert standing below, arms open, saying, "Come on, Sarah. One more storm." Josiah appeared behind me, nodded once, then pressed the pouch over the edge. It fell fast, splashed quiet. No scream, no struggle, just a shadow swallowed by salt. By morning, the ship was buzzing. A passenger had vanished, an elderly woman with heart medication and poor balance. Her nurse companion had last seen her just before midnight. She liked to take walks, Mira told the crew, convincingly distraught. I warned her it was windy. She never listened. The staff offered tissues. Mira cried just enough. When the Coast Guard arrived, she clutched my scarf like it had meaning. The news broke within 12 hours. Elderly woman lost at sea. Retired schoolteacher presumed dead after cruise accident. No body recovered. Dan went live on social media that evening, face pale, lips trembling. "My mother, God, she was complicated," he said. "But she did not deserve this. No one deserves this." He sniffled, tapped the phone screen. "We've set up a GoFundMe for funeral expenses and to cover her outstanding medical bills. Anything helps." Behind him, Lily dabbed her eyes and held up a framed photo of me from 10 years ago, cropped to erase the wheelchair I was in post-surgery. The donations came in fast. Pity has a pulse on the internet, and Dan knew how to sell pain. "She was misunderstood," he wrote. "A victim of time and neglect. We want to give her a proper farewell." Meanwhile, they began redecorating my room. Kayla posted a video tour of her new personal space, featuring a ring light and a new vanity she bought with her inheritance advance. I watched it all from a supply room 3 decks below, sitting on a crate beside Josiah's crew logs. I did not cry. I did not rage. I simply waited. They thought they had erased me, but all they had done was give me the perfect cover. My name is Marion Rose now, at least on paper. That is what the forged document said, stamped quietly with a seal from an island that rarely asks questions. Josiah had contacts there. "No one will look for you here," he promised. "They already think you are gone." I rented a room in a boarding house on the edge of a quiet coastal town, the kind of place that smells like salt and damp towels. The landlady called me Miss Rose and never asked about my past. She had her own ghosts, judging by the way she avoided mirrors. I walked to the pier every morning, fed the gulls, and listened to the waves. I did not speak unless spoken to. I lived. That was enough. For a while, But memory is not a quiet thing. It scratches at the inside of your chest. I kept a notebook. I wrote down dates, names, and hints. I started following Dan's financial activity online, tracing what he posted, what Lily shared, what Kayla hinted at in her stories. They were not grieving. They were harvesting sympathy like wheat. Then came the auction. Lily posted a flyer on social media, "Treasures of a Lost Matriarch." She listed my wedding dress, tea-stained lace. I had sewn myself and the family photo albums, the ones I had laminated after Evan spilled orange juice on the originals. She even included a rusted music box Robert had given me on our 10th anniversary. The caption read, "Preserve the memory of a mother who gave everything." Below that, "Proceeds support mental health awareness." She always knew how to dress theft in virtue. It was Evan's photo that gave her away. He posted a snapshot of the dining room with the caption, "The old lady's ghost would flip if she saw me using her china set for pizza rolls." I zoomed in. Behind him, stacked on the sideboard, was a set of documents, ones I recognized. My original mortgage file. My signature. I knew the slant of that R. I taught penmanship for 32 years. I needed help. Real help. So I made a call on a burner phone Josiah had given me. The voice on the other end answered with disbelief. "Mrs. Warner? Is that really you?" It was Elena Cross. She had been my student years ago. One of the quiet ones, brilliant but scared, always one step from being crushed by circumstance. I tutored her for the SAT after school, no fee, just cookies and tea. Now she was an attorney. A good one. One of the few who believed in justice over spectacle. When we met at the Harbor Cafe, she stared at me like I was a ghost. I handed her a folder, handwritten notes, screenshots, printouts. She did not interrupt once. When I finished, she took a deep breath and said, "They are going to regret everything." Within a week, she discovered the truth. Dan had forged my signature not once, but 6 times. He used my name to secure a $850,000 loan from a private credit syndicate, not a bank. A syndicate, high interest, short leash, unforgiving collectors. He had defaulted twice. The house was on the brink of repossession, but he had diverted funds into a cryptocurrency account under a shell corporation. Elena found it all. "He never planned to keep the house," she said. "He planned to cash out before it collapsed, and with you legally dead, he had no liability." I nodded. "And the GoFundMe?" Elena smirked. "Already over $50,000. The description reads, 'To honor a woman who raised us, who endured so much, and left us too soon.' They even uploaded a video montage." Lily added a quote, "Her silence was her sacrifice." I laughed for the first time in months, not because it was funny, but because they did not understand the danger of silence. Silence remembers. Silence builds. Elena reached across the table. "We can build a case. Identity theft. Fraud. Wire fraud. Possibly attempted manslaughter if we can prove the cruise plot." "They will deny everything," I said. "They always do. But paper does not lie." I left the cafe feeling something I had not felt in a long time, the slow, steady heat of resolve. I was no longer Sarah the mother, the widow, the ghost in someone else's hallway. I was Marion now. I was memory made flesh, and I had no intention of staying dead. By the time I was ready to make my move, the tears they had faked were already drying up. Lily had booked a motivational speaking event about grief and growth. Dan had posted a blog titled, "Losing a Mother, Finding Myself." He was writing a book. Kayla was selling merch with my handwriting screen printed across tote bags. "Love is silent," the bags read. I never wrote those words, but silence was no longer my strategy. I mailed 3 thick envelopes, one to the state attorney's office, one to the fraud investigation unit of a major insurance carrier, and one to a bank that used to reject Dan's loan applications until my forged signature made them reconsider. Each envelope contained the same contents: copies of emails, voice recordings, screenshots, forged loan documents, bank transfers, and one handwritten letter that began, "I am not dead." The first recording was of Mira, on that late-night phone call, casually planning my death. Her voice was unmistakable. "She's small, one push, Port deck, nobody questions a slip. The second piece was the email Dan had sent to Josiah through a cutout account, offering a gesture of appreciation in exchange for a quiet disappearance. Josiah had saved the message, for when the tide changes, he told me. Next came the bank statements. Hundreds of pages of activity showing the GoFundMe account swelling, while my so-called funeral costs remained flat. Most of the donations were routed to a crypto wallet under an LLC registered by Lily, L&K Collective. Evan's college savings, once a modest but stable account, was drained within 3 days of my death. The money had been used to invest in digital cat illustrations, non-fungible tokens, NFT kittens. The entire portfolio crashed within a month. The funds were gone. The final item was a notarized affidavit from Elena, now acting as my legal counsel, stating clearly: the individual presumed deceased is, in fact, alive and acting under duress at the time of disappearance. All attempts to harm or defraud her will be subject to full prosecution under both state and federal law. Within 72 hours, subpoenas were issued. The GoFundMe was frozen. The account flagged. A formal investigation began into misuse of public funds, insurance fraud, attempted elder abuse, and falsifying legal documents. My death had officially become a criminal case. Dan posted a new video. This one looked less polished. His hair was unwashed, his voice flat. "We are cooperating fully with the investigation," he said, eyes darting off screen. "This is all a big misunderstanding. My mother had memory issues. She might have wandered. We did our best. But the internet is not kind to the exposed." Comments rolled in. "Memory issues? You called her a rock just last month. So she wandered all the way to a notarized attorney's office? She looks pretty coherent in these photos she just posted." The image of me, taken by Elena smiling gently on a dock with my locket in hand, had started to circulate. The locket, they claimed, was lost at sea. Then came the news about Evan. His school released a statement. His tuition was unpaid. His dorm assignment had been revoked. He had been told to leave campus. Kayla was seen crying in a live stream, blaming financial instability for the collapse of her influencer brand. "They took everything from us," she sobbed. The audience was not sympathetic. One comment read, "You mean your grandmother took back what was hers?" I sat on my balcony, tea in hand, breathing in the salt air. Josiah called that night. "The state just froze their main checking account. They're stuck." "Good," I said. "Let them learn what real helplessness feels like." Elena was preparing the civil suit next. Damages, recovery of stolen assets, restitution. But for me, the real victory was simpler. Their story had unraveled. Their lies had faces now ugly, desperate, and exposed. I had once given birth to Dan. I had once baked his birthday cakes, packed his lunch, sat by his hospital bed when he broke his arm playing tag. But none of that erased what he had done. Betrayal, once complete, is not softened by origin. It is sharpened by it. I was alive. I was the proof. I was the scar they could not erase. And I was just getting started. The memorial was held at the Civic Center, grand, tasteful, and rented with money stolen from my name. Dan had invited local press. Lily had sent out custom invitations with cursive fonts, and Kayla had hired a videographer to capture the grief. I watched it all unfold online, sitting in the back of a taxi, parked just outside. I waited until the doors had closed and the lights dimmed. Then I stepped out. I wore Robert's navy coat, the old one with the brass buttons and faded shoulder seam he used to wear on night watch. It still smelled faintly of salt and old tobacco. The collar was frayed, the hem too long for my legs, but it carried weight, his, and now mine. The lobby attendant did not question me. Perhaps they thought I was part of the tribute. Perhaps they saw a ghost. I slipped through the back corridor, up the service stairs, and emerged at the side of the auditorium. The screen was playing a montage. My face, my voice, still photographs in black and white. Over it, Dan narrated. "She loved quietly. She gave without asking for thanks. She was our foundation." I almost laughed, but my hands stayed steady. I stepped down the side aisle, past rows of folding chairs filled with strangers holding brochures printed with my obituary. At the front row, Kayla wiped a tear and adjusted her silk scarf. Lily dabbed at her eyeliner, stealing glances at the cameras. Dan stood at the podium, ready to deliver what he called a final farewell. That was when I walked onto the stage. Gasps spread like fire. Dan froze, the microphone in his hand trembling. For one long second, no one moved. Then I spoke. "Do not stop on my account," I said, my voice clear, calm. "You didn't bury me deep enough the first time, and here you are, shoveling again." Someone dropped their phone. A woman screamed. A cameraman started filming. Dan took a step forward. "Mom, wait, But I raised my hand, slowly, deliberately, and unclipped the chain from around my neck. It held my locket, the one Josiah had fished out of the waves when we staged my fall. I opened it, pressed a tiny switch inside, and set it on the podium. A voice filled the room. It was Mira's voice. "She's frail. One push. Port deck. Nobody questions a slip." Then Dan's voice, crackling through poor audio. "Do it right. No mistakes. The body's the problem. If we lose that, we gain time. Paperwork's easier." Silence fell like a storm. I let it hang there, let every pair of eyes turn toward Dan. He stammered. This is out of context. This isn't what it sounds like." "Out of context?" I said softly. "You told them it was an accident. You told the world I wandered off. You took money in my name. You sold my memory to buy your redemption." Kayla stood. "Is this a prank? Are you even real?" I turned to her. "Real enough to remember the time you begged me for money for your prom dress and called me a walking thrift store when I said no. Real enough to know you burned the family albums because they did not match your brand." I reached into my bag and pulled out a half-burned photo album, charred along the edges, pages wrinkled with heat. I placed it at Lily's feet. "I kept what you tried to destroy," Lily whispered. "How are you alive?" I looked at her. "By choosing not to die for people who never truly saw me." I stepped off the stage. No one followed. I walked through the same aisle I had entered, the same faces now turned away in shame, in disbelief, in fear. I paused once, at the back, where an old couple sat, hands clasped. The woman reached for me. "You're a miracle," she whispered. I smiled gently. "No, just a woman who ran out of reasons to disappear." Outside, the air was warm. The sun had begun to set. I felt Robert in the wind again, proud, steady. I did not look back. I had already buried who I was. Now, I was walking toward who I had become. The courtroom was colder than I expected. Maybe it was the air conditioning. Maybe it was the people inside, polished, powdered, tight with tension. Dan sat at the defense table in a suit he could not afford without stolen funds. He did not look at me. Lily sat 2 rows behind him, jaw clenched, mascara perfect. Kayla was absent. Her social media had gone dark 2 weeks earlier, after her sponsorship deals dissolved and her follower count plummeted. Truth travels fast, especially when wrapped in betrayal. The prosecutor read the charges one by one. Conspiracy to commit murder, fraudulent acquisition of funds, falsifying legal documents, financial abuse of an elder, attempted insurance fraud. Dan's attorney tried to spin it. He was under pressure. Debt made him desperate. There was no direct action, only intent. But intent was enough. The judge, a silver-haired woman who never once blinked during the recordings, leaned forward and said, "Intent to erase a living human being is not merely desperation. It is moral rot." Dan was sentenced to 12 years in state prison. No parole for the first 6. He flinched. Not because of the time, but because of the cameras. He had built his life for show. Now he would be exposed without edits, without filters, without applause. Lily fared no better. 7 years. Conspiracy, fraud, and aiding in an online scam that deceived thousands. She wept in court loud, performative sobs that drew no comfort. The judge dismissed it with a single sentence. Crocodiles cry, too. When it was my turn to speak, I stood, walked to the front, and faced the court. Not Dan, not Lily, the court. "I am not here to forgive," I said, "nor to forget. I am here because silence almost killed me, and because too many women like me are erased by people who smile during the day and scheme at night." The room stayed still. I had nothing left to prove. I was not seeking pity. I was anchoring truth. The civil court followed suit. All fraudulent transactions were voided. The house, my house, was returned to my name. The GoFundMe donations were refunded. Evans College reinstated his financial aid when proof emerged of how his father had drained his fund behind his back. Kayla, curiously, never contacted me. Perhaps that was her version of shame, or perhaps the silence meant nothing. I visited the house once after the ruling. Just once. It was hollow, like a museum of a life that never truly belonged to me. I stood in the doorway where Robert used to wait with open arms after his voyages. I stood in the kitchen where I had baked 3 generations of birthday cakes. I touched the windowsill where I once pressed little Kayla's footprints into drying clay. And then I walked away. I sold the house 3 months later. The funds were more than I expected. Apparently, grief made the property famous for a while. Buyers love stories, but I had one more story to write. With Elena's help, I created the Second Breath Foundation. Its purpose is simple: to support elderly individuals discarded by their families, to provide emergency housing, legal aid, and dignity. We fund safe homes. We train nurses who know the difference between care and control. We offer grants to seniors fleeing financial abuse. I used the first donation to buy a small seaside home where 3 women now live together, laughing, cooking, reminding each other that love does not always come from blood. The second donation was anonymous, but I knew it came from Evan. It was only $38.17. In the note, he wrote, "I am sorry, I didn't know. I hope this helps someone." I never responded. Some truths do not need conversation, only acknowledgement. I did not build Second Breath to replace what I lost. I built it because survival should not be rare, because too many people think old women are easy to forget, because sometimes justice is not loud. It is patient, it waits, it watches, and when the time is right, it steps into the light, wrapped in an old navy coat, holding every name that tried to erase it, not to scream, but to remind them, you cannot bury what refuses to die. The harbor was louder than I remembered, yet somehow gentler. Maybe it was me who had changed. Maybe the world had always been noisy and unforgiving, and I had only now learned how to walk through it without flinching. Seagulls screeched overhead, tugging at scraps of yesterday's lunch. The water slapped lazily against the pylons, glowing with streaks of gold under the late afternoon sun. People rushed by, dragging luggage, hugging relatives, snapping photos. I let them pass. I did not need to hurry, because for the first time in decades, no one was waiting for me to finish being useful. I had come here to ask for something small and quiet, a place where I could earn my keep, mop a deck or fold a towel, listen to the engine hum, and feel the sea breathing beneath the hull. Something honest, something mine. The Celestia loomed ahead, vast and white, its glass balconies glittering like scales of a tame sea dragon. I found comfort in its size. You cannot hide intention on a ship. Every movement echoes, every betrayal has a sound. I walked up the gangway slowly, gripping Robert's old navy coat tighter around my shoulders. It still smelled of him, faintly salt and sun and the ghost of pipe tobacco. A crew member pointed me toward the upper deck. "Captain Sterling is finishing pre-departure checks," he said. His voice was respectful in a way that startled me. Respect was something that had faded from my life like ink washed in bleach. I climbed the stairs anyway, step after steady step, my knees aching but my resolve stronger than the pain. Josiah stood with his back to me, speaking with a deck officer. He wore his captain's coat this time, navy with gold trim, the same uniform Robert used to admire from the docks. When he turned and saw me, his expression shifted from authority to warmth in an instant. "Sarah," he said, sounding like someone greeting a friend who had survived something no one else could understand. "I hoped you would come." "I said I would," I replied. "And I always keep my word, even when others do not." He chuckled softly. "That is why you survived." I looked around the deck. "I would like a job," I said, handing him a small folded note. Something simple. Cleaning, organizing, scrubbing rails, folding linens. I do not want charity. He took the paper, but did not open it. "Sarah, you do not need to work." "I do," I insisted. Not for money, for place, for purpose. I want to belong somewhere that does not require me to disappear to be appreciated. He studied me for a moment. Walk with me, he said. We strolled toward the bow, the ship's length stretching ahead like a promise. The ocean breathed steadily below us. I wondered if this was how Robert felt every time he left shore, steady, focused, free. You know, Josiah said gently, I have been captain for a long time. I have seen thousands of passengers come and go. I have seen people angry at the sea, afraid of the sea, trying to conquer the sea. But you, he paused, you are the only one I have ever met who walks toward it like it is home. Because it is, I whispered. He nodded, as if he had understood long before I said it. Then he reached into his coat and pulled out an envelope. I cannot let you scrub floors, he said. Not because you are incapable, but because you deserve something else. I frowned. What do you mean? He placed the envelope in my hands. Open it. I did. Inside was a ticket. First class, 2 years, unlimited travel, all routes, all harbors, no fixed return date. This is too much, I said, my voice barely escaping my throat. It is exactly enough, he replied. You gave me life when I was a child lost on that pier in Wilmington. You fed me, patched me, believed in me when no one else did. Without you, I may not have survived long enough to become a captain. Now, let me give you something back. I do not need luxury, I whispered. This is not luxury, he said. It is freedom. You choose when to leave. You choose where to go. For the first time in a long time, you choose for yourself. I closed the envelope slowly. My hands trembled, not from age, but from the weight of suddenly having a future again. He stepped back politely, giving me space to breathe. You do not have to decide now, he added. But know this, everyone on this ship owes their safety to you, because you saved the man who became their captain. You belong here more than any of us. We stood in silence, facing the open water. The horizon stretched endlessly, a soft, glowing line between sea and sky. A place without judgment, without expectation. The kind of place where grief can dissolve quietly and joy can bloom without permission. I took a deep breath. The wind brushed my cheek, warm and welcoming. I could almost smell Robert in it, the familiar mix of salt and sun-worn flannel. It made my chest tighten with something that was not sorrow but memory. I still feel him, I said softly. Josiah nodded. Of course you do. The sea remembers everyone who ever loved it. I took off my glove and reached out, letting the wind glide between my fingers. The air was cool, alive. It curled around my hand like an embrace. Robert, I murmured. You're still here, aren't you? The breeze rose gently, as if answering. I'm still alive, I whispered. And this time, I get to live for me. The ship horn sounded, deep and resonant. A new journey beginning. I held the ticket tighter. It felt like redemption, like breath, like a door opening in a house I thought had been locked forever. I think I will stay, I said finally. Not as a passenger, not as a ghost, but as a woman who has earned her place. Josiah smiled. Then welcome aboard, Sarah. I stepped forward, letting the deck steady under my feet. The ocean unfolded before me, wide and waiting. For the first time since Robert vanished beneath the same waters, I did not feel abandoned. I felt accompanied. No one was pushing me. No one was discarding me. Just the sea, and my own heartbeat, both finally moving in the same direction. I closed my eyes one last time. Robert, I whispered, I'm still here, and I'm finally living because now, it is for me. Then I opened my eyes and walked toward the horizon. It has been a year since I stepped onto the Celestia with nothing but an envelope and the remnants of a life I had already outgrown. A year since I stopped being someone sent away and started being someone who walked toward her own horizon. People talk about healing like it is a straight path. It is not. Healing is tide work, it comes in waves. I have lived through 4 seasons on the sea. I have watched the Caribbean turn from turquoise to storm-stirred gray. I felt the Mediterranean cradle the ship like an old friend. I have woken in Lisbon, in Barbados, in Santorini, in ports whose names I once mispronounced and now speak like prayers. Every place has added something back into me, something I did not know had been taken. I am not a guest on this ship anymore. I am part of its rhythm. I started helping the housekeeping team not out of duty, but because I wanted to. I fold towels into swans with the same hands that once packed lunches for Dan. I polish the railing where I staged my own death, and the metal no longer carries any fear. I pour tea for older passengers who look lost, because loneliness recognizes itself across tables. I listen. I share. I breathe. People here call me Miss Sarah. Not mom, not burden, not old lady. Just Sarah. A woman, an individual, a soul. And I have grown close to Josiah in a way that is neither romantic nor replaceable. He has become something rare, a witness. Someone who knows my story not to use it, not to twist it, but simply to understand where I stand on the deck each night when the stars come out. Sometimes we talk about Wilmington. Sometimes we talk about nothing at all. Silence between kind people is not heavy. It is warm. The Second Breath Foundation is thriving. Elena sends updates every month. They found permanent housing for 9 abandoned seniors this year. They prevented 3 cases of financial exploitation. A woman who had been living in her car for months now runs a small knitting circle at one of our community houses. They named the room after me. I told Elena not to. She ignored me. She said, "We are not honoring your suffering. We are honoring what you chose to do with it." Evan sent me a letter once, just once. It arrived on the ship in a small, creased envelope. "Grandma, I figured out what college I want. I'm working to pay for it. I'm staying away from Dad's path. I want to be better. I hope you're alive and safe. I miss you." I cried when I read it. Not because I expected an apology, but because hope is a rare thing to see bloom in soil that barren. I sent no reply. He does not need my words to become the man he wants to be. He just needs the freedom to try. Kayla has stayed silent. I do not think she hates me. I think she fears the reflection of herself in my absence. Some truths take years to face. I will wait, quietly, patiently, without expectation. As for Dan and Lily, they remain in prison. I do not check on them, not out of coldness, but out of completion. Some chapters are not meant to be reread. The justice system wrote the ending they crafted for themselves. I wrote a different one. Tonight, the ocean is calm. The sky is a vast, soft navy, scattered with stars that look close enough to touch. I lean on the bow railing, the metal warm from the afternoon sun, and I feel the steady pulse of the waves beneath me. "Still here, Robert?" I whisper. The breeze rises gentle, steady, curling around me like familiar arms. A year ago, I asked him if he was still with me. Now, I tell him something new. "I am not just surviving anymore," I say quietly. "I am finally living." A young couple passes behind me, laughing, planning their future. A grandmother walks with her grandson, pointing at the ocean like it is a treasure map. Somewhere inside the ship, music drifts from a piano bar. Life goes on, and this time, I am part of it. I take a deep breath. Salt air fills my lungs, cold and clean and full of promise. The ship horn sounds. Tomorrow we set course for a new port, a new continent, a new stretch of world I have never touched. And I am ready. Not because the sea saved me, but because I saved myself. For the first time in my 79 years, the horizon does not frighten me. It invites me.